Who doesn't love New Orleans with its world-class food, sensuous jazz, with a joie de vivre, that joy of life that pops up out of just about every pothole, and we got a lot of potholes. In New Orleans, we have a lot to celebrate. There are things that we anticipate, but there's just some things like violence and crime that is difficult to tolerate. One of the things we've learned about children in our community is that 1 in 5 children have witnessed a murder, 1 in 3 have witnessed domestic violence, 4 in 10 have seen someone shot, stabbed, or beaten, and over half have had someone close to them murdered. This is a statistic and a situation in a city that it's hard to live with when we think about these are our young citizens. One of the things we at emPOWER NOLA decided is that we needed to do something collectively. We have on our team Dr. Maurice Scholes, a physical medicine and rehab doctor that deals with developmental disorders in children, Ms. Rhonda Jackson, licensed social worker, who has leveraged her advocacy with the legislator and the community to deal with childhood hunger. Dr. Lauren Tavabar, who's a triple board adult psychiatrist, child psychiatrist, and pediatrician, and myself, Dr. Arnold James, a career psychologist who's dedicated my life to anxiety and depression of New Orleans citizens. While we do this work individually, we understood that we can't just deal with the one. We have to deal with the masses. And what we decided was to develop a curriculum that would be trauma-informed and culturally based to help helpers help those that needed the help the most. One of the things as we started to develop this curriculum, we decided, who do we give this curriculum to? We started out thinking it would be our cultural bearers, those who are people in our community who would be able to deliver it to children. But as we started to develop this over time, we pivoted to give this curriculum to anybody who would sit still long enough for us to hear it. And so we got a couple of community groups together, some school groups together, and one of the first comments after delivering the training was, the helper said, "This has helped us understand that we have unmet traumas that stand in the way of how we see children." So then we became more emboldened to believe that what we're doing was the right thing. Not only were we helping children, but if we help the helpers become better helpers, then they could stand in the gap and help children when they needed it the most. One of the core principles of this curriculum was psychological first aid. Now, everybody's heard about first aid. You know, if you cut your finger, you get a Band-Aid. You know, if you've got a bruise, you get antiseptic. But what happens when you're distressed? What happens when you're upset? What happens when you experience trauma, and God forbid, complex trauma? One of the things that psychological first aid does, it helps people to capitalize on their resilience. When we're talking about psychological first aid, it is not evidence-based, but it is evidence-informed approach to help people deal with their distress in the moment. It's a portable kind of technique that it doesn't require special training and able to apply this to people. I've applied this in my individual practice when psychotherapy was not necessary. Something like psychological first aid was. For example, one of my patients, Josh's mother called me in tears and said, "Dr. James, please help me. My son is in a dark space. I really don't know what's going to happen with him." Josh had been a kid I'd seen when he was about 10. It's about 6 years now, but now he's dealing with adolescent issues. And so I told the mother, give Josh my number, because that's the kind of therapist I am. I want the kids to have my number, that they know that they can call me at any time. I also joke with them, not on Sundays during brunch time, but I still will get to you when I can get to you. And it doesn't matter, even if it's brunch and it has happened, I still answer the phone. When it comes back to Josh, I said, Josh, buddy, what's going on? I didn't say what's wrong with you. I asked him what was going on, what was happening to you. Josh said, during the storm, I left. I wasn't feeling safe in New Orleans. I went to live with my father. The parents were divorced. I went to live with my father. Turns out he was not as engaging with me and supportive of me as I thought my dad would be of his adolescent son. And I started to feel sad. At the same time, COVID happens. I'm in a new school. I'm trying to get on the basketball team. The new COVID comes, we can't practice, my grades are slipping, I'm losing eligibility, my world is falling apart. And said, but Josh, can you think of any time when things were better? He said, yeah. I said, well, let's talk about that. What did you do during that time that made things better? And he talked about how he changed his mind about things. He started to change his outlook. So, well, let's do that. Buddy, that's your ticket. That's your superpower right there. You have the power to change your mind. And he did. After about 2 weeks of sitting with Josh, helping him to calm, helping him to realize that he did still have some control in his situation, I was in an airport and my phone goes off. And I see Josh's number and I'm like, oh. And then I have to remember my own psychological first aid. Take a deep breath. Expect the best, and let's see what happens. And what Josh sent me was a text of his vision board. And on his vision board, he put out a plan for the next couple months of his life. He had a dream list of getting a car, going to college, getting college basketball offers, becoming smarter, making friends. In the middle, I couldn't really understand his handwriting, so I texted him because that's the kind of relationship we had. And I said, Josh, what is this in the middle? He says, I want to remind myself that I am the best. It was in that moment I started to warm and realize that all of the work that we do in emPOWER NOLA, everything that we do for children in the community is important. Every time we meet a group or a group cancels, we just keep fighting to get another group on the agenda because it is so important that we help these helpers, help these children. And when I looked in the corner of Josh's vision board, then I knew this work is the work that we're supposed to do because Josh wanted to remind himself through our relationship that he mattered. And this is the message for all of you. If there's a child out there to you that you think matters, then you have an obligation and a responsibility to join us in the work that we do with emPOWER NOLA and help helpers, help those that matter. So at the end of the day, everybody can participate in the celebration.